to preview the weekend's action. I want to start with Arsenal against Newcastle. James, you were in Porto in midweek. That wasn't Arsenal. I don't know what it was. Didn't have a shot on target, but it's two-legged and they'll probably go through. Do you expect them to seamlessly get back into some excellent Premier League form that they've been showing in recent weeks when they face Newcastle in the Saturday night game in the UK?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see a better display. They were unusually inhibited in Porto. I mean, you mentioned they're not having a shot on target. It was the first time in 2 years they haven't had a shot on target in a game. So it was something of a surprise that they were quite so timid. I think the atmosphere, maybe the occasion, maybe even the sense of history got to them a little bit. Obviously, they haven't been in the Champions League for 7 years, and then there were those 7 years of getting knocked out every single year at the last 16 stage, which obviously Mikel Arteta experienced as a player. And it did feel as though that whole atmosphere around that game and the magnitude of it maybe just got to the players a little bit and just prevented them from playing their best. I think back at home, good atmosphere, Saturday night, 8 o'clock kickoff. I bet the police are loving that timing, by the way. But, it'll be boisterous. They'll want to get behind the team. They'll want to get themselves back on track. They've obviously been in very good form in the Premier League. I suppose the only slight question mark is just about this, another team that might come and defend deep. They're obviously Newcastle perhaps not defending as well as they did earlier in the season, but they can be very compact, very resolute, and that habitually has been an approach that has stifled Arsenal somewhat. So they need to get the zip and the confidence back into their play. But I thought they seemed to take the defeat pretty well. Declan Rice spoke after the game in Portugal and was kind of on the front foot about it and saying they'd said a lot of positive things in the dressing room. I've seen Mikel Arteta a lot angrier after games when they've lost than he was in Porto. So I think they've absorbed it. They know as you said, they've got another chance to get out of jail in the second leg. And so the attention, I think, quickly switches back to the Premier League. But they've got to be on it from minute one.
Mm-hmm. Janusz, is this perhaps a trap game for Arsenal against a Newcastle side unbeaten in its last 5? Or do you look at it that Newcastle have kept one clean sheet in the last 10 and Arsenal are scoring for fun 21 goals in their last half dozen games and expect Arsenal to score loads? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think I'm with James in terms of Arsenal. I think, if I look at Newcastle in this particular one, unless they get back to basics, which was, let's not forget, the way they defended. We can talk about all we want, the fact that Alexander Isak hasn't been around, Callum Wilson, Joelinton, obviously, Joe Willock, although a couple of them are, possibilities, I suppose, for this game. But if you remember last season, at least for me, one of the main reasons why Newcastle were as good as they were and where they finished was defensively. What's their excuse right now? The back four is there. Okay, Nick Pope, an important part of that defensive unit, is not. But, now for a few weeks, they've put the band together. Last season, what they give up? 33 goals the entire season. That's 41 right now. That is a major issue of balance because I think, with Anthony Gordon and Almiron and Harvey Barnes, I think there's enough there, right? Guimaraes in the midfield. Longstaff's been a very good soldier for them as well. So I don't see an issue with that, but I just think that Arsenal will continue. I think it was one-off with Porto. If I was to say something, because I've seen games from Arsenal like that, is that how important Martinelli and Saka are. And how important to a degree is lack of Zinchenko, the ability to double up, right? Kivior had a good game, but he's obviously not a left back. Ben White hasn't been the same. And if you saw what Wendell and Galeno did on the left-hand side and João Mario and Conceição on the other, that's as balanced a team as I've seen in terms of attacking Arsenal this season as well. All 4 players on both flanks were absolutely outstanding, and they limited 2 key players. And if I add Odegaard, who really couldn't find them, that was your blueprint for that.
Mm-hmm. James, you spent 3 hours on the motorway coming back from listening to Maurizio Pochettino earlier today. Arsenal players didn't have that, but they did have the same journey back from Portugal that you had. Could fatigue maybe play a part in this one for Arsenal?
Yeah, possibly. It's not, the reason why this game is 8 p.m. UK is because it was originally going to be the early game on the Saturday, but that fixture couldn't take place because Arsenal were playing in the Champions League on the Wednesday. So the earliest time it could be played was to move it back to the Saturday night. So it is a little bit unorthodox in that the sort of Wednesday to Saturday night scheduling is not something that teams habitually tend to deal with. My understanding was I think Arsenal stayed the extra night in Porto and trained on the Thursday over there before flying back. So I think they were kind of conscious of trying to do their recovery and their warm down there and get that into the legs as soon as they could, rather than flying back overnight, getting back at 2-3 in the morning and then trying to play catch up for the next sort of 48 hours. So and I think also the training schedule, I think that changed today, which is why Mikel Arteta's press conference was earlier in the morning than it normally is. So they are rejigging things behind the scenes to try and make sure they're right for it. One other thing I would say about this game is that there'll be a bit of needle in this game, because this has developed into a little bit of an unexpected rivalry. If you remember this game last season, it finished 0-0, and there was a lot of accusations of time wasting. I think it was going on quite early on in the first half from goal kicks from Newcastle, and there was, from my understanding, there were a few words exchanged between the backroom staffs and even at a higher level than that, and then that obviously fed into the game up at St James's Park when Newcastle beat them 1-0, and they scored that goal, which prompted the formal complaints to PGMOL. About that goal being disallowed, and obviously all of the talk there. So there will be a bit of extra motivation on both sides, which could actually help Arsenal in terms of that quick turnaround.
Yeah, and Newcastle has only lost one of its last 4 against Arsenal previously in recent years.